welcome to another Wednesday night sessions. As always, I am your host, Mitch Nobis. It's a fairly informal show, but we are technically somewhere in season 3 by the time you see this. This will be part of what we're considering season 3 in the really not new anymore online version of this. This has definitely become the normal format for this show by this point. And I'm digging it because tonight is another one of those episodes where we can bring in somebody who is not from Metro Detroit. But I do believe she is a native Midwesterner, right? Taylor, you're Chicago native, right?
I am, yes.
And in Cincinnati right now. So like you got like a dual Midwestern like card. you can speak up for the Midwest in a lot of ways. So joining us tonight is Taylor Byas from our Detroit sister cities, Chicago and Cincinnati. How's that? That's a good way of putting it. Taylor is one of my favorite poets, and like a lot of these guests that we're bringing in from not Detroit area, one of those writers I've discovered on Twitter. She is a fantastic follow on Twitter and a fantastic writer. And when we get into the questions, we'll get into that. She's fairly new on the scene, which I had no idea. So we'll come back around to that after her reading. So Taylor, I'm going to throw it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for having me and for that introduction. So I decided I was struggling. I was like, what do I want to read for this? And of course, I texted one of my best poet friends, Jason, and Jason was like, read from the chapbook. Your chapbook's coming out. You need to get used to that. So my chapbook, Bloodworm, is coming out this July with Variant Lit, which is really, really, really exciting. And so I thought I would read from the chapbook to sort of get used to that and also to just celebrate it because it's like my first book baby. So I'm gonna read some poems from Bloodworm tonight. The first one I'm going to read is Hypothetically Speaking, and this poem is written after Ashley M. Jones. Hypothetically speaking, let's say we've just ordered appetizers. Let's say the waitress starfishes her fingers beneath her tray for balance, brings brown bread the color of her skin. Say I overdip my wings in ranch and it drips from my lip, a white fang shrinking down my chin. Shirt. Say I wet my cloth napkin in your water with lemon to dab at the stain. Say I only rub it in deeper, make it worse. Say the waitress returns to ask, are you ready to order? But is interrupted by the toddler at the table behind her, the boy nudging the neon orange eye of his plastic revolver into her backside. Say he screams bang, bang with every trigger pull. Let's say we finally order. Let's say you reach across the table to thumb the grease on my mouth, to spread it like lip gloss. Say our kiss becomes a crime scene, the boy murdering you while your breath is still on my tongue. Say we pull apart to find his double-fisted hold on the gun, expert, steady. Say his sauce fingers fumble to cock back the hammer, honey mustard now stitched in the grip panel's patchwork. Let's say he then aims at me and fires. Say the empty clack of the hammer rebounding is still heavy enough to jerk me. Say his parents clap their hands, laughter sizzling like the fajitas in their cast iron boats. Say they watch me, wait for the clutch, the gurgle of blood and spit together. Say they wish for my last moments. Say their smiles begin to strain at the corners, begin to say, go on, play along. Say I fist my shirt in my hands. Say I spill down the leather booth onto the floor, right in the aisle. Say I look off into the distance, eyes fluttering closed, then open again. Say a waiter steps over me. Say I reach for the ceiling, my eyes finding yours. Say you aren't impressed. Say I then stretch an arm towards you, rasp out, help. Let's say you don't. Let's say you let me die. Say you look over at that white family, the parents pointing and cheering, the boys shooting rounds of pressurized air into my black body. Let's say you don't smile. when you suggest maybe someone should call 911. Okay. The next poem I'm going to read is a poem I wrote after visiting the Titanic Museum in Orlando, Florida, which was a really interesting experience. It was interesting because I love the movie Titanic, and the museum itself is really interesting. But then also when you consider like the very real history surrounding the Titanic, especially when you think about race, it becomes like this really layered experience of like being a Black person in a Titanic museum where Black people weren't actually really that much involved in the original thing. So this is the poem that sort of came out of thinking about that. It's called The Titanic Museum in Orlando, Florida. I board 1912. A fake boarding pass renames me like a new document, brands a fresh time of death. No cameras to recall what I cannot. The necktie and sock starched by ocean, a pocket watch, a gilded macaroon balded of gold flecks, its hands pegged on salt-annulled hours. I don't look for myself in the list of dead. The names like Star Wars opening crawl, graved in thin ice, the letters thin scars. But a plaque wards off my touch. An iceberg sweats in another room, and I press my palm into its face until it aches. The surface ticketed with handprints and finger holes from the guests that passed before me. But this is the easy part. On the fake deck, I forget myself. Lights pitched over the railing to parrot water without breath, waveless. One of the door's portholes black as a moonless night. And I catch the hollow of my own mouth, the surprise at the sudden rewrite of history, the reflection of my Black face, a stranger to this ship. Okay, let's see. I'm going to I'll read Pantoum for Black Boys. This poem is probably one of the oldest poems, if not the oldest poem in this chapbook. It's a few years old. I wrote this poem in my master's, as part of my master's thesis. And this is sort of when I was discovering my love for formal poetry. This is the first Pantoum that I wrote, and I still love it just as much as I did when I first wrote it. So this is Pantoum for Black Boys, and it was inspired by the painting African Night Market by Walter Batiste. Pantoum for Black Boys. As the sky's colors separate like oil and water, Black men turn blue in the sunset. Flies hover over the tables, circle like buzzards, fruit left for dead. Black men turn blue in the sunset like cotton dipped in indigo. Police circle like buzzards, fruit left for dead, a red smudge on a white sheet. Like cotton dipped in indigo, police lights spotlight the streets. A red smudge on a white sheet marks the end of childhoods. Lights spotlight the streets, but the dark squares of sidewalk mark the end of childhoods, and the mothers have nothing but the dark squares of sidewalk to blame. We light candles, we pray, and the mothers have nothing but an empty room to fill, to lock away, to blame. We light candles, we pray for a night without bloodshed, a night that is nothing but an empty room to fill, to lock away. I want to be you for a night, without bloodshed, a night that is nothing but a trip to the gas station in a hoodie. Damn, I want to be you, as the sky's colors separate like oil and water. Okay, I think I'll read one more, and this one is a A Golden Shovel, written after a Joy Priest poem, Joy Priest, whom I love dearly as both a poet and a friend. This poem is titled Youre It, and it's inspired by the death of Tamla Horsford, who died tragically after attending a sleepover with a group of white friends. And the quote from Joy Priest's poem Nightstick that it takes after is, "You are a black girl, but don't know. You sleep next to it, crooked bone, split open head." You're it. The sleepover nettles itself into a frenzy from everyone's restlessness. You sleep yet? Tossed like a horseshoe to snag on the poles of your breaths. The birds are trilling each other into silence to hear the grass sink its blades into the sole of a bare foot, the soft crunch of lost battle. Outside, you huddle under the black tarp of night with the others, shock someone with your body's static. One girl dares you all into the woods for hide and seek. "It will be fun," she says, but the thick foliage of the trees chokes out the moonlight. A voice tells you, "Don't peek," as they lead you into the brush, two hands over your eyes. You know how to play, right? And sure you do. You close your eyes and count to 30. You listen until there is no difference from their clumsy skittering and the sleep-crossed frisking of squirrels overhead. When you open your eyes, you are next to nothing, night unfolding like a black hibiscus in each direction. You call out to the group, "Ready or not, here I come." Taunt yourself with the echo. It takes a while for the eyes to adjust, to unlearn the shape of a killer from the crooked branches, to hear anything but the papered leaves snapping like bone beneath your steps. You are a fawn then, your jelly-legged steps to test the soil, the split-second freeze when suddenly the girls reappear for a different game, yipping into the night, open-mouthed, a flashlight shining into your eyes, your back kissing the ground, a bounty on your head. Okay.
Man, oh man, oh man. Those are incredible. Thank you for reading those.
Thank you.
This is honestly like the hardest part of hosting the show is like you're talking about like formal work, right? Like when the director Dwayne and I hatched this plan, we said we want to keep it short, so only two questions, and that's like the hard rule. But I have so many more than two questions right now. So that's the hardest part of the show. Thank you for reading those. And it's I don't talk about my personal life out there much, but my wife and I are adoptive parents, and we are raising two beautiful young black boys in this world. So I'm really happy you read that Pantoum also. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy that you felt that.
Oh yeah, So thank you for reading it. So the questions don't necessarily follow up on the particular poems that you read, although I might ask a follow-up question that comes to one of them. But anyways, you recently mentioned that you kind of are like recently arrived at the poetry world. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but that you've only been publishing for a couple of years, and it sounded like maybe even like writing seriously for not too much longer than that. And I phrase it that way on purpose because, like, we're all writers. Like, people are writing in their sixth grade notebooks or whatever, but there's a difference between that and like this seriously, like, I'm actually going to try to put stuff out into the world. Like, obviously, one, they go together. You don't get to the putting stuff out into the world without the scribbling in your notebook at some point in time. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you shift into a higher gear. So tell us about that. Like, that's kind of a marvelous short time frame. Like 2 years ago, you got into this, and now you're working on a PhD in poetry. So not a question so much as just me putting that ball on a tee. Like, tell us about that. Like how'd you get so far so fast? Like, that's an incredible story.
Yeah. Well, as you've said, I've always been a writer. I've always been sort of writing in notebooks and diaries and things of that nature. And I think when I was younger, I knew I wanted to write in some capacity when I was older. But I just think I let most people discourage me. You know, you tell people that you want to be an English major or you want to write, and people are sort of like, yeah, but how are you going to make money? Or something along those lines. So I think I never really let myself truly dream that I could be a writer in this capacity. And I also just didn't see people who look like me who were also doing the thing that I wanted to do. My access to that was limited. But I did go into my undergrad as an English major, but I was a fiction writer at that time. So all of my classes in undergrad, I was writing fiction. And it wasn't until my senior year of undergrad, I took an ekphrastic poetry class and it changed my entire life. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think it was sort of a perfect marrying of the storytelling that I loved about fiction, um, and the love of language, right? I love fiction, and my poems still tell stories. I'm very much a narrative poet, and I was like, oh, this is the switch that I need to make. And so I went into my master's as a poet. I switched over. And so during that 2 years, that was really about me finding my voice as a poet, because I hadn't really been, writing and studying poetry during my undergrad. And so I just spent those 2 years figuring out what it was that I wanted to write. What is it that I want to write about? What stories do I want to tell? Erica Dawson came and visited the university, and I was like, oh my God, here's a Black woman poet doing what I want to do, writing stories about people that look and sound like us, and doing it in form and breaking the form. And that was a really big moment that gave me permission to write those things that I wanted to write, and also showed me that form doesn't have to be this sort of painful and dry process, but it can actually be really fun, and there's like this big reward in telling those stories within that form and within those constraints. And it was pretty much at the end of my master's. I graduated from my master's in April of 2019. And that summer, the summer of 2019, is when I started to send work out. So really 2 years ago, basically from now, is when I started to send work out. And in 2019, I got some poems accepted, and that was really excited. I sort of set a goal of like, I want to just get 5 things out there this year. And I think I ended up getting double that or something. And I was talking to my mom about it, and my mom was like, well, now you have to go big. And she gave me this insane goal of just like, you should just go for 50. You should just go for like 50 poems in 2020. Just like do it, get the name out there, like go for it. And me being the competitive person I am, I was like, okay. And I got 50 poems published last year.
Oh my Lord, that's awesome. Well, shout outs to moms. Wow.
Shout out to mom, knowing how to motivate me.
Seriously. Wow, that's incredible. So
Yeah.
from 10 to 50, I love that. How a little inside baseball question. So how many submissions did you send out, like ballpark number, to get to 50 publications? Because that's like a part-time job in itself, sending out that many submissions.
The crazy thing is, I didn't send out anywhere near as many as I thought, because if I look in my submittable right now, like my total submissions, I don't think are even over 100. I mean 200. They're not over 200. So I think what happened was I started to get things published, and then journals also started to reach out to solicit things, which was really helpful, right? So that sort of speeds up the process on a lot of those acceptances as well. Everything happened so fast last year. I started to get things published, and then solicitations came, and then an agent came, and then a chapbook came.
Oh man.
It was a very a very eventful year. I was not expecting any of it, but I'm so grateful for everything that came my way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And the follow-up question I was hoping to squeeze in, you kind of already brought up. So like you seem really skilled at a wide range of poems, but not a ton of people are drawn to, formal structures like a pantoum, for example. But you seem to thrive in it. So I mean, do you think that's because you started out in fiction? Which, by the way, we're gonna hold you, not like this will get out there in the Twitterverse, and everybody's gonna know you started in fiction. So like, just FYI, like we'll give you time, but we want the novel too. I mean, 5-10 years, I don't know. We'll work out a time.
My collection has been started. I'll put that out there.
I love it. So back to the question I was aiming at. So like, why do you think you're drawn to the formal structures? Because like fiction kind of has like 3-act structure, like fiction sort of inherently is structured. Is that why do you think you like structure in poetry, or is it kind of the games aspect of like squeezing things into places? Like, talk to us about that.
I think for me, it's like almost all, if not entirely, the game aspect, the puzzle aspect of it. I love coming to the page with a set of rules that I sort of have to beat. It's like beating the game, right? You kind of have to get these things or check these boxes to sort of complete the thing. And I love being able to do that, and I love the reward that comes out of that. But also something that I attended a reading recently, and Michael Fraser, I believe, said he often writes about, race, and writing about that, you come to the page and you just have so much to say, right? It feels like word vomit sometimes. And form can sometimes be a really useful box to sort of put everything into, right? You're like, how do I say all of these things? Where does it start? Where does it end? How do I not go overboard? And form can be a really nice way to say, here are the parameters that you have to fit this thing into. And I think especially with this chapbook, which is entirely about race, form was definitely a way for me to figure out, okay, how do I say this thing that is incredibly, painful, that is involving a lot of emotion? How do I say this thing in a way that comes across emotional, but also comes across as I've actually thought about how I want to say it and what I want to say? And I think form is a really wonderful tool for that also.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. I mean, I love that answer in a lot of different ways, but I think you really nailed part of it there. In that, like, it gives you a way to express something that's almost inexpressibly large. Like you have to cram it into a thing. Like, obviously I have like every advantage. I'm a white dude. I'm even tall. You can't tell this here, but like I'm 6'3" white dude. So like, what right do I have to write about race? But we have these black sons. So like my parenting, like every parent has parenting anxiety, but then I'm in this kind of, not that unique. There's plenty of transracial families in the world, but like, so my parenting anxiety is layered on with trying to tell them about, like George Floyd and whatnot. And so like I think one of the more successful poems I've had trying to express that was I crammed it into a villanelle. And I think it's because of what you're talking about, right? Like so you've got to repeat this line, like, Mitch, you can do this. Like this line goes here, this line goes here.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult thing to do in just free verse, right?
It is. And even fiction too, like you have even more space in fiction to get even more sprawling.
yeah. That's fiction's a whole other thing. I dabble in that too, but that's about basketball. My fiction, my fiction is a whole different thing. All right, the other formal question. So the second question, I don't think I remember to warn you about this. It, generally speaking, has nothing to do with writing. The second question is just goofy. And so, as I mentioned, you're great on Twitter, and I've noticed that you give cake a lot of shout outs on Twitter. So you got your pick of the cakes. I don't know how do we, your question is cake question mark. What best cake? Certain cakes in certain scenarios. Give us like a cake guide if you could.
Cake guide. So for me, the classic, like I'm just going for cake. It's got to be white cake, buttercream icing. Like we just have to go simple classic. Bad day, red velvet.
Okay.
We gotta go red velvet. Celebration, fancy cheesecake.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I like turned my paper in. I finished that 25 page paper and I went to the Cheesecake Factory and got like Oreo dream cheesecake because that's what you have to do.
That just makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah, but like I think I probably buy like white cake with buttercream icing the most because it's just my classic favorite. And it's one of the nice things about being an adult. Like I did taxes today and that was really sad and tragic, but then I was like, but I can go buy myself a whole cake and no one's gonna stop me.
Yes, I love that. No, I mean we're on the cusp. One of our children is heading into middle school. He's reaching middle school age, and he's very worried. Like the other day, he said, "Like, Dad, is being an adult hard?" And I'm like, I mean, in some ways, I guess, but buddy, like, I can just go buy cookies.
Yeah, you can. It's just, oh man, you can buy cookies. You can like get McDonald's when you want. There are some great perks. Yep. There's some Waffle House at 2 a.m, a personal favorite of mine as well.
I have not explained to him the difference yet between being in your 20s and being in your 40s. I figure he has to find that out on his own. I am past my Waffle House at 2 a.m. years, but they were good years. They were good years.
They are good years. They are. Oh man.
I love it. Oh, well, Taylor, this has been a treat. Thank you very much. And the way we do this show, like we're recording this in late April and God knows when we'll get it out there, May, June, something like that. So just for the audience, I also feel like it's important, she just finished up a huge paper and has had a lot going on. So I'm especially thankful that you took time tonight to join us and talk poetry and cake.
Oh yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was awesome to like virtually meet you.
Yeah, likewise, right back at you.
Yeah, I hope that we get to meet in person at some point, perhaps AWP more than likely at some point.
That would be
thank
fantastic.
you for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and doing this. And to the viewers out there, like I said, this will probably air somewhere in May, June, and the chat book comes out in July. So don't forget this episode. You're watching it probably a few weeks after this is aired. You will have a chance to go buy that chat book. So we'll put all the links to that stuff on the Twitters and the YouTube page and whatnot. So keep your eyes peeled for that, viewers. And Taylor, thanks one more time. And viewers, we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.